Will be now read a second time, and I call the member for Lindsay.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. It gives me great pleasure to rise today in support of the Higher Education Research Amendment Bill 2014. This reform is good news for all Australian universities, especially those universities in my electorate of Lindsay, in particular the University of Western Sydney, of which I am an alumni. Thank you. It's good to have a member from Macquarie here who also has a UWS campus in her electorate. But it's also good news for the people of Lindsay, who are young and aspirational. It is good news for them to give them more opportunity. The opposition scare campaign around this issue is merely hot air and no substance. Some of the arguments from those opposite would be laughable if they were not so ridiculous. These higher education reforms introduced by the Minister for Education are all about providing opportunity. Opportunity for more Australians to access higher education. Opportunity for our local universities to excel and to become some of the best in the Asia-Pacific region and ultimately the world. On budget night, the Treasurer made the following statement, and I quote, "Fellow Australians, we should have at least one university in the top 20 in the world, but we do not, and we should have more in the top 100. I asked the Leader of the Opposition, what is so wrong with Australia wanting to excel on the international stage? Why does Labor want to hold Australia back? We should strive for greatness, and I am pleased these reforms will go a long way in allowing the Australian university sector to achieve these noble goals. Broadly speaking, Deputy Speaker, these reforms will, firstly, ensure Australia's universities are not left behind at a time of rising performance by universities right around the world. Secondly, ensure that Australia's higher education system is sustainable well into the future and that our third largest export, that of higher education, the $15 billion international market, is protected and able to flourish and grow. To expand opportunities for students, in fact, these reforms will create an additional 80,000 university places. To offer more support for disadvantaged students through Australia's scholarship scheme. And finally, support more courses, greater diversity and more skills for our workforce. Since these forms were presented in the federal budget by the Treasurer and then introduced by the Minister for Education, I have consulted widely with my community and more specifically with the University of Western Sydney itself. I would like to recognise and thank Chancellor of the University of Western Sydney, Peter Shugold, as he has been the chair of the Minister's Quality, Deregulation and Information Working Group. I understand Professor Shugold has made significant contributions to this working group and providing substance to the Minister in the area of deregulation of higher education. While the University of Western Sydney propose amendments to the government's higher education reforms, they do, as with most of the Australian university sector, broadly support the deregulation of the sector. A robust discussion is critical to democracy, and I thank the university for its contribution to this debate. I would also like to thank the Vice-Chancellor of the University of Western Sydney, Barney Glover, for his personal support, but for also his comments and guidance in regard to these reforms. He has said what the sector needs is stability in policy, and that there appears to be a strong belief this government is providing just that. And I quote, "The University of Western Sydney, like the rest of Australia's higher education sector, needs certainty regarding the policy, funding and regulatory environment in which it operates. This is critical in ensuring we are able to compete internationally, but also pivotal to enabling us to help drive the development of Western Sydney, Australia's third largest economy. These reforms will provide the university with the autonomy and certainty which will allow them to thrive in a changing marketplace. I am also pleased to note the reforms in this amendment will better enable the University of Western Sydney to better target their programs and their courses to the specific needs of its students and Greater Western Sydney. UWS itself identifies the need for this in a briefing it supplied to Western Sydney MPs. And I quote, "With in excess of $3.5 billion in government infrastructure commitments and a population set to reach 3 million by 2036, Western Sydney's significance to the national economy cannot be overstated. The supply of a highly skilled, productive and diverse labour force will be critical to the region's economic contribution and the success of the Commonwealth's large-scale investments in the region. Increasing access to higher education is an essential part of meeting that challenge." It continues, "Western Sydney's political representatives have the opportunity to ensure Australia's higher education sector can deliver on the Commonwealth's impressive range of policy commitments by influencing the budget's higher education reforms as they progress through the Senate." Deputy Speaker, as UWS clearly points out, with the growth and potential of Western Sydney being realised through the reforms of this coalition government, there will be an increasing need for the local university to provide courses that also match the needs of this growing and thriving region. For this reason, UWS clearly supports this reform, which creates more autonomy in our universities. As the Treasurer stated on budget night, with greater autonomy, universities will be free to compete and improve the quality of the courses they offer. It is the intent of this amendment to build a higher education sector that is more diverse, more innovative and more responsive to student needs. By deregulating and creating a demand-driven sector will allow universities to set their own fees and compete for students. This competition will enhance quality. It will make higher education providers more responsive to the needs of the labour market, but more importantly, it will provide more opportunity for students. This does not mean $100,000 degrees like the opposition would have you believe. In fact, in some cases, it could mean the cost of degrees will in fact fall. Rather than the government regulating the cost of degrees, universities will have the flexibility to set their own costs based on market demand. They will compete for student enrolments based on quality and cost. When universities and colleges compete, students win. It's that simple. The current system distorts individuals' capacity to distinguish between the two different opportunities of education within the sector. An academic degree costs virtually the same at every university. Institutions simply cannot use price to distinguish themselves in the market or offer true value. Economics 101 teaches price often acts as an indicator of quality, with a direct correlation to demand. Deputy Speaker, simply it drives behaviour. This is what, if we need, we are able to lift the quality, deliver courses that students and employers demand, and in turn create a truly world-class system that keeps up with other established and rising national institutions. We need each of our universities to become accountable to the market, but more importantly, to their students, and also for the type and quality of courses that are offered, and deliver these things accordingly. This does not mean universities will immediately escalate their fees as the opposition would have you believe. To the contrary, most Australian universities are acting terribly responsibly in regard to this aspect. The University of Western Sydney, for instance, was the first university in New South Wales to in fact freeze student fees for 2014 to ensure certainty to their students. This is a responsible move, a move by the university and a strong indicator how responsible the sector will be to respond to demand-driven—
Order. It being 7:30 p.m, I propose the question to the House. The question is that this bill be now read a second time, and I call the honourable member for Lindsay in continuation.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Most Australian universities are accepting their responsibility in regard to the changes to the Higher Education Act. In fact, the University of Western Sydney was the first university in New South Wales to freeze its student fees for 2014 to ensure certainty for its students. This is a responsible move by the university and is a strong indicator about how the sector will respond to the demand-driven and autonomous proposal by the government, but also to assess and determine how they will maximise the opportunities presented in these amendments. Aside from the opportunities, these reforms present Australian universities, and I think it is critical to emphasise the benefits for Australian students. I have already commented that the competition enabled by these reforms will be a win for all students, and I believe it is important to highlight, as is the case at the moment, the students will not have to pay a single dollar up front. Fees will be repayable when students are in the workforce earning a sustainable income. The Australian HECS structure is to be commended. It has seen thousands of first-generation students, like myself, gain a higher education degree. The Coalition, however, identified barriers to the higher education, and I am pleased these amendments will go some way to overcoming these. The current arrangements disadvantage students who want to study sub-bachelor higher education qualifications such as diplomas, advanced diplomas and associate degrees. These provide excellent pathways in creating opportunities for students needing time to develop both their skills and qualifications necessary for a bachelor degree, and many other tickets to jobs providing work-ready graduates. I myself studied through the TAFE system. I worked full-time whilst I was studying through TAFE, and by the Western Sydney Institute of TAFE was able to gateway into the University of Western Sydney, where I obtained a Bachelor of Business with a major in marketing. I am proud to have come through the higher education system in this way, and am proud to be a part of a government that seeks to support students by providing access to universities. We are also supporting students by providing HECS to subsidising students that seek these type of pathway qualifications. This move alone is expected to provide an additional 80,000 higher education opportunities, 80,000 more students annually, with Commonwealth support by 2018. Deputy Speaker, I and the Minister for Education anticipate this will overcome some of the disparity in my own electorate. During the consideration in detail in June, I raised with the Minister concerns I had about access to education in Western Sydney. For instance, in Glenmore Park, in the southwest of Lindsay, the median income for a couple with children is $2,474, which is higher than the New South Wales average. Further, 33.5% of the people who are attending some form of educational institution, be it primary, secondary or tertiary, and 11.1% currently enrolled in university or tertiary education. To the west of my electorate is North St Mary's, about 13 kilometres from Glenmore Park. The average income there with children is $1,935, which is $539 per week less than Glenmore Park and lower than the New South Wales average. In North St Mary's, 33.8% of people are attending an academic institution. Only 5.1% of the community go on to tertiary education. So let me repeat, Glenmore Park, 11.1% of people currently enrolled in tertiary education. North St Mary's, 5.1%, less than half. This is despite North St Mary's being much closer to the local University of Western Sydney campus. This added Commonwealth support for higher education is welcome news for the people of North St Mary's, who will now have greater opportunity to go on to university should they so choose to do. Further to these measures, the new Commonwealth Scholarship Scheme will promote access for students from disadvantaged backgrounds and ensure they share in the benefits of a deregulated environment. This will allow providers the flexibility to provide individual support tailored to the unique needs of students and is a welcome news for aspiring students in communities like North St Mary's. Deputy Speaker, there is a general consensus among those in the sector and the government that we have a once-in-a-generation opportunity to shape Australian higher education system that is sustainable, affordable and equitable in serving the best interests of our nation. As the Treasurer said on budget night, we should aspire to have a world-class tertiary education sector. By deregulating the sector, I believe we can achieve this and create a tertiary education sector that this country deserves. It is in this way that I commend the bill to the House.
Honourable member's time has expired.